Hey guys, MetalJesus here. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I did a video talking about how I got an Xbox One X, and one of my favorite features of that system is that it is backwards compatible with about 30 original Xbox games. However, that immediately got me thinking about all the other awesome original Xbox games I would love to see Microsoft bring to the system. So, in this video, I have a stack of original Xbox games that Microsoft should add the compatibility to the Xbox One. Let's take a look. All right, I'm going to dive right in here, but in no particular order. We're going to start with Test Drive Eve of Destruction and Need for Speed Underground. Now, I should mention right off the bat that I'm not saying that these are necessarily Xbox only or Xbox exclusive games. I'm simply saying that these are great games on the original Xbox, and I think they could benefit from a boost from the Xbox One. For instance, Test Drive Eve of Destruction is also available on the PlayStation 2, but it's the Xbox version that is considered the better version because of the improved performance. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the Test Drive series, well, that's understandable because it kind of died off. I mean, it's pretty sad because it used to be hugely popular. I mean, I originally played it on the Commodore 64, but there are a bunch of different versions. Now, the reason why I'm mentioning this one is because it stands out for a number of reasons. One, it's a partial open world, which is cool, but not necessarily unique. What makes this game unique in my mind is that it's all about demolition derby, basically smashing and bashing into other people's cars, all while racing. It's so much fun. And then we have Need for Speed Underground. Now, supposedly this game will run on Windows 10, which is cool, but again, I would like to see it run on the Xbox One because that's just easier for me. Also, this just happens to be one of my favorite games in the Need for Speed series, of which, of course, there are a ton of them, but this game just has beautiful graphics, has really solid arcade controls, kind of old school controls. It doesn't feel like the car's too heavy, and this game introduced drag racing, and it is so much fun. I would even go so far as to say this is probably one of the last great Need for Speed games. Next up, I have two Xbox exclusive games, Otogi 1 and 2. These two games are highly regarded hack and slash action games, and they're primarily known for their fluid gameplay, very similar to Devil May Cry. And these are no budget titles either. They put a ton of work into this. As a matter of fact, the first game has 29 levels to it, which is kind of unheard of for an action game. Another thing that stands out with these games is the destructible environments. Now, this comes from Software, which made a lot of great action games on the original Xbox, and this series is definitely one of their best. All right, moving on with other games I'd like to see on the Xbox One, Stubbs the Zombie, and then one of my favorite James Bond games of all time, 007 Everything or Nothing. Now, let's be honest, normally when you play games involving zombies, well, you play the good guy trying to take out the zombies, but not in Stubbs. In Stubbs, you are the zombie, and it's hilarious. And what do zombies do? Well, they eat brains, and that's exactly what you do in this game. So you spend most of the time eating brains, trying to regain your health, but that also converts those humans into a zombie horde that will fight alongside you. Also, being a zombie, well, you're not exactly smart enough to carry or figure out weapons, so you end up using parts of your body to defeat the humans. But you technically are smarter than the average zombie, so at times you can drive vehicles. I guess part of your past life kind of comes back to you, and so it's a really kooky, crazy game. It also has an amazing soundtrack. Now, I understand that there have been an awful lot of mediocre James Bond games, and some pretty bad ones too, but Everything or Nothing is one of the all-time greats. And that's primarily because EA put the time and money into making this feel like a big budget Hollywood movie, including getting some A-list actors, also having a fantastic soundtrack, a title sequence, and a ton more. And they just nailed the vibe of James Bond because there are a ton of just thrilling set pieces in here, including shooting scenes, driving, stealth, and even rappelling down the side of an exploding building. Sure, this game came out on a bunch of different platforms, but in my opinion, it's the Xbox version that is the most capable. Moving on, let's take a look at Call of Cthulhu, Dark Corners of the Earth. Oh yeah, and then Burnout 3, baby. Starting with Call of Cthulhu, this is a first-person survival horror game set in the Lovecraft universe. This is a dark, weird, and a very scary game. One of the cool features about this game is that your character will lose sanity if you look directly at something that is unsettling or perhaps hard for your mind to understand. I remember when this game first came out, it just felt like there was nothing else quite like this on consoles. Now, playing it back again, it's definitely a little clunky and it's not perfect, but if you are a fan of survival horror games and you haven't played this, you should definitely check it out. And then what to say about Burnout 3 that I haven't already said a million times before, but I love talking about this game. And to be quite honest, until EA remasters all of them, well, I'm just going to keep talking about it because I want to see it on the Xbox One. This is many people's favorite Burnout game, and for good reason. It has excellent tracks, great unlockables, an amazing sense of speed, and a proper crash mode. And despite those graphics being somewhat dated, I still think it holds up today, and it would be great to play it upscaled on the Xbox One. Next up, X-Men Legends 1 and 2. I'm including both of them here because they are both awesome action RPGs. And as you would expect, in this game you control a team of Marvel superheroes. What's funny is that when I first heard of these games and the idea of being a top-down action RPG with Marvel superheroes, I actually thought, oh, that doesn't sound that much fun because, you know, when you think of superheroes, especially games, you're thinking, oh, it's going to be fast action, it's going to be arcade action, you know, maybe a beat 'em up. But I feel like they really nailed it with this game. It actually is some of my favorite Marvel games ever made. I think it's because they are both the right amount of RPG. They don't get bogged down. They're not like, you know, those old Fallout games where they were turn-based and they took a long time. These are very much action. The other thing too that I really like about them is that there's a bunch of personality and style with all those Marvel characters, and they shine through in these games. And like I mentioned previously, I know these games came out on other systems like the PS2 and the GameCube and even the PSP, but it's the Xbox version that is the best, and so that's a reason why I'd like to see it transition over to the Xbox One. Yes, now it's time to talk about Timesplitters 2 and Future Perfect. So, the thing to know about Timesplitters, the series, is that it was made by the same team that made the classic Perfect Dark and GoldenEye on the N64. Some of the most beloved first-person shooters on consoles of all time. But with this series, they went completely wild. It's almost like no idea was too crazy. With a name like Timesplitters, you would expect them to be about time travel, and that is absolutely the case here. And it's also a big part of the appeal because every level is completely different from the previous. And so I can't really emphasize that enough. Again, because you're going through time, everything is different from level to level, and it's just so freeing, so much fun. You never know what to expect in these games. The one knock I would have against Timesplitters 1 and 2 is that they just didn't have a good story that tied all those different levels together. However, they fixed that in the third game, Future Perfect. Future Perfect has all the crazy and zaniness of the previous games with the level design, but it ties it together with an original story that is absolutely hilarious. One of my favorite things of the story is that you'll often run into your previous self and then see a story moment from two different angles, and then you'll interact with yourself, creating some very memorable moments. It is a damn shame that we didn't get another sequel to this awesome series, so if they could bring it to the Xbox One, well, at least it'd live on. Alright, next up is The Suffering and then its sequel, The Ties That Bind. If you're not familiar with this series, they are third-person shooter/survival horror games. In both of these games, you play as a guy named Torque, who is an inmate accused of killing his wife and kids. And of course, as you would expect, when you do that, or at least you're accused of it, well, you're going to prison. The problem is that he can't exactly remember what happened. Was it real, or was it actually demons? Some of the things that I like about this is that both games have multiple story paths and endings depending on what choices you make during the game, and also if you played the original game and then imported your save file. This series in tone always kind of reminded me of the Rockstar Manhunt series. Did you play that? It's definitely like that in style and atmosphere and tone, but this is definitely more scary. Next up, more arcade racing goodness. I'm including Outrun 2 as well as 2006 Coast to Coast. As I mentioned, this is arcade racing at its best, and of course it's based on the 80s classic. Although I have to be honest, in many ways I actually like this version better. Of course, because it's a modern game, it benefits from better graphics, but I also like the handling better than the original arcade version, and this includes little mini games that are both hilarious and super fun to play. Now, if you're wondering what the difference between Outrun 2 and, say, Coast to Coast is, well, Coast to Coast is considered a reimagining of the 80s original arcade game, but with elements of Outrun 2 added in there as well. So really, in my mind, Coast to Coast is the one to get if you had to choose. Now let's talk about Mechassault and Mechassault 2 Lone Wolf. You know, it's funny to me how certain games, certain series, certain genres just go in and out of fashion over time. And, you know, there was a time back in the late 90s and early 2000s where there were a bunch of mech games, but now they're just not around as much anymore. And so maybe it's time to bring these back. And part of the reason why I say that, especially about these Mechassault games, is because they were very well made games. I mean, they were really fun. As a matter of fact, my buddy Drunken Master Paul, well, he swears by the original Mechassault on Xbox. I think he might have played that game 30 times, 40 times. I mean, he loves these games. They're so well made. All right, guys, so that's my short list of original Xbox games that I would love to see Microsoft bring to the Xbox One. Either just allow it to play, maybe upscaled, or enhance it for the Xbox One X. You know, I'm just gonna dream big. I think that would be very, very cool. Love to know what you guys thought about this video and what other games came out on the original Xbox that you would love to see Microsoft bring to the Xbox One. What is your wish list? Keep in mind that I haven't even touched on the 360 yet, because that's a whole other system that has so many great games for it. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching. Thank you for subscribing, and take care. I have a confession to make, and that is I was going to include Phantom Dust in this video in the list, and then during my research I was like, oh, Microsoft actually gave away this game for free digitally on the Xbox One and Windows, which I was so excited for because this is another really amazing Xbox game back in the day. So it deserves to live on. If you haven't played Phantom Dust, I highly recommend it, especially if you like action, tactical games. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching this video and have a great day.